Hi, Koala. Thank you for doing this.
Yep.
So, who are you and what exactly do you study in college?
I studied biology in undergrad, so I have a Bachelor of Science in biology. I started my PhD in neuroscience about a year ago. I'm currently working on a traumatic brain injury project, and I will probably be continuing to work on a traumatic brain injury project for the rest of my PhD.
Okay, so it's turning into your project then.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
So, what made you want to study biology in general, like starting with undergrad?
Uh, I always sort of had an interest in biology, although it wasn't very obvious because that wasn't my strong subject. Like in high school, I was more of like I was good at like English classes and stuff like that and writing. And but I always kind of liked biology even though I wasn't strong at it. And then when I decided to go back to school, the time that it stuck, because that was actually my third try at college. Um, my stepdad was like, "Hey, you should maybe go to medical school. You could major in chemistry." And my mom and I were both like, no, biology." And so that's how I started studying biology. It was kind of random, but also not.
It sounds like it sounds like your family was just kind of like guiding you a little bit towards science, though. I mean, it's the chemistry, biology.
Yeah, yeah, they were like he was like, "Oh yeah, if you want to go to med school, I mean, it's probably like easiest to like major in a science, even though you can technically major in anything for med school." So,
That is true.
yeah, yeah, biology. I was like, "Yeah, I've always liked biology. I could probably do that." And it turned out that it really worked out, and I loved it. So, yeah.
So, what made you guide towards neuroscience, towards graduate work?
Yeah, that's a little bit of a crazier story. It was like halfway through my undergrad, my dad died in kind of a tragic way, and he had a lot of mental health problems. He was chronically depressed. He had been the entire time I knew him, and he had addiction issues. So in my like grief, and I started like thinking about like the different like brain pathways that might make him like that and not me. Like people were growing up, people were always worried about me that I was going to end up like that. And I do have a lot of like things that are like him, like anxiety, but I'm not chronically depressed. I don't really have addiction issues. Um, and so I just became really interested in what might cause that. And that's why I started thinking about neuroscience.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I guess going towards like your undergrad experience. So I know from talking to you that you're a non-traditional student, meaning that you started undergrad kind of later in your 20s. So what was your experience going through undergrad as a non-traditional student?
Um, I found it, I mean, sometimes it was hard because I felt really old on occasion because people were a decade younger than me because I went back when I was 28. So early on, I was in classes with some 18-year-olds.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, but I mean, I started at community college, so there were like a couple of older students there. Um, I had a fine experience. It kind of um, made me interact with people that I maybe normally wouldn't have interacted with, which I think is important, at
Yeah.
least socially and getting to know other people. Um, I know a lot of other adult students have problems because they might have kids or families. I didn't have any of that. Well, besides my, parents, but I don't have kids or like a husband or whatever. And So it was kind of easy for me just to go back. And I also had like the support of my parents, which I don't know if I would have been able to do it as quickly as I did it without them. I feel like I would probably still be an undergrad if they hadn't have been there to support me like the whole way through.
Yeah. So I guess looking back, what was the like you mentioned there was the age gap difference that was sometimes like a bit of an issue in classes, but what was the hardest part of being a non-traditional student as someone who went straight like as someone for me who went straight from high school to undergrad. There were some things in undergrad that I just didn't see, but like being a non-traditional student, what was some of the hardest like moments, I guess, for that?
Um, I guess there was a lot of times in like sometimes I'd be in study groups or something, and there were a lot of people that weren't taking, the education and learning part of school as seriously as I
Yeah.
was.
Mm-hmm.
People were less focused on studying. There, I saw a lot, especially as I went into my 4 year. I kind of saw a lot of like cheating in
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the pre-med classes I was in. Um, and uh, and what one kind of funny thing, I guess this wasn't especially hard, it was just kind of funny to me. But the first research internship I did, which was about like a little more than 3 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
I was working really closely with this girl who was about 10 years younger than me. And she she would constantly be asking me if I knew who somebody in pop culture was. Like it was usually someone that was like Instagram famous or something. And I would go, no. And then she would show me a picture and I would go, no, I still don't know who that is. It was like every single day. I was like, I don't know any of your pop culture apparently. I was like, no, no, I don't know who that is.
Yeah, that generation gap really hits strong sometimes.
Yeah.
So were you I guess in your situation were you able to find other non-traditional students to like I guess talk to during your time in undergrad?
Yeah. So when I was at community college, I didn't really talk to a whole lot of people, but there were a lot of non-traditional students that I was in class with, some of which were older than me. And also at my 4 year though, that was part of the reason I decided to go to my 4 years because I knew there would be more non-traditional students there than the other school I applied to.
Yeah.
Because it's a big commuter school and it was just I just knew there would be more non-traditional students there. Also, because it was like very cheap for a 4 year.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, I actually did like later on in like my last year of undergrad. One of the labs I was sort of in, it wasn't like my official lab, but I went to the lab meetings because I was doing a collaboration project with them. She was a member of the lab, and she, I think, was in her 40s,
Mm.
like early 40s. And I made pretty good friends with her. I still talk to her. We were applying to PhD programs at the same time, but she was applying to clinical psychology. So,
It's a little different, I guess, from neuroscience, but not much.
yeah. Also, like it's very hard to get into clinical psych programs. I've heard, and she ended up getting into a master's program instead and did that. So,
Yeah. I guess going towards like the financial part of undergrad, is there any like scholarships or grants that some schools have for people that are non-traditional students?
yeah. So I went to undergrad in New Orleans, Louisiana. And I have a Pell Grant, but that's for everyone, no matter your age. You can apply
Mm-hmm.
for that, I think. And so I had that. But then one I didn't know about also that I ended up getting awarded with was it was called like the Louisiana Go Grant, and it was a grant from the state for it was need based. So if you're poor on paper, which I was because I wasn't really working that much during undergrad,
Yeah.
and um, and it was for students I think over the age of 25, and they it was quite a bit. Like they supplemented a lot. Um, I managed to get almost all of my tuition paid with the grants. I had a transfer scholarship for the first year, my 4 year, that helped. And then um, in my last semester, they just randomly gave me a $2,000 scholarship. I didn't apply for it. I don't know if it had to do with I don't know what it was. They just gave it to me. Like the dean of my college was like, "Yeah, you deserve it. Here you go. Here's money." And I had actually already paid my entire tuition and fees with grants, so they basically just gave me $2,000.
Honestly, you can't beat that.
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
Yeah. Do you see a lot of opportunities like that showing up more? I guess.
Um, I guess I kind of tried to look for and apply for things early on. It was really hard to find like scholarships that I qualified for. There were a lot. I looked specifically for non-traditional students ones, and a lot of them was like you had to have some other qualifier, like you had to have kids or something.
Hmm.
So it was a little, yeah. It was. I probably could have looked harder, but I like I said, I was very lucky to have the support of my parents. So
Yeah.
most of the money that I found was just to help them out so they wouldn't have to pay so much. So,
Yeah. So for universities looking at admissions, are is there a pull to take more non-traditional students now? Is admissions opening up to more non-traditional students as time goes on, especially fresh out of the COVID pandemic or going into another one? Is there is there a lot of more open up in admissions for non-traditional students
like for grad school or for undergrad,
for undergrad,
um,
if you know of it, if you know?
I, some of like the upper level, like Ivy schools, I read like don't take transfer students at all. So I would say like Columbia, for example, I remember reading they don't take transfer students, which means they don't take non-traditional students either.
Oh,
Yeah, they have like a special, I think Harvard's the same way. They have like a special other school that's for non-traditional students. I know because I get emails from them still to this day, even though I've graduated, to like apply to that program. It's like I think Columbia's is called like Columbia School of General Studies or something.
mm-hmm.
But um, I mean, I don't think the school I went to cared because I mean the 4 year I went to pretty much accepted everybody. They're like it was
Yeah.
pretty much applying to community college to get into my 4 year. And then I did apply to another 4 year private school that actually is very well known and has a good reputation because I just wanted to see if I could get in. It was a little too expensive, so I figured I wouldn't go anyway.
Yeah.
And they accepted me too as a transfer student. So I mean, I guess if it's not like Harvard or Columbia or one of those types of schools that I don't know how many of them really care. I think it depends on if they take transfer students or not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you think being a non-traditional student prepared you more for undergrad and then jumping straight into graduate school, do you feel like you were more, yeah, just more prepared for college in
Yeah,
general?
yeah, not in like an academic way, but in a maturity way.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know there's people in my program that are much younger than me who seem very mature and like they're doing just fine. When I was that age, there's no way I would have been able to handle, well, grad school. I mean, and when I was that age, I knew I couldn't handle undergrad because I tried it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, s- there's something about just my whole, prefrontal cortex getting developed, and just I don't know. I was kind of wild when I was younger, so I've just like seen a lot of things and been through things, and I think just I don't know, going through all of that it helped first of all get it out of my system. So I'm
Yeah.
like, I'm not ever gonna wonder like what could have been.
Yeah.
So
So there's
yeah,
something about going through undergrad and waking up the next day with a headache and having to take an exam. You just kind of, you eventually learn, but it takes a couple of years.
yeah, and I worked jobs that had nothing to do with what I'm doing now
Yeah.
for 10 years. So it was, yeah, I don't know. I'm glad I had all the experience. It really like helped me in a subtle way. It's that I've always kind of found hard to explain, but yeah, like not in like it's giving me the knowledge of what I'm doing now kind of way, but like just I've experienced things, so I maybe have an easier time with dealing with certain pressures than my younger peers might.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you, and I guess going from undergraduate to graduate level, did you see a better, I guess in your case, a more clean adjustment to graduate level work from being a
Yeah,
non-traditional student?
yeah. At first it was really rough. I'm not gonna lie. I had a really hard time at first in grad school. Um, the classes were really hard.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if some of my undergraduate education didn't maybe fully prepare me for the rigor of it. Um, but like I powered through and I didn't give up, and I made it through my first year just fine. And it was really stressful at times, but I mean, I dealt with it.
Yeah.
And if I was younger, I maybe would have given up because I just wasn't very good at dealing with stress like that when I was younger. So
Yeah. So I guess in your journey through, college to your bachelor's and through graduate work, what has been, I may have already asked you this, but what has been the hardest part of your journey so far?
um just to keep working and all the FOMO I have with my outside of school friends that I had before school.
Mm.
Because none of they were like my best friends, and none of them are in school, and they haven't been for a long time. And I had to give up on a lot of like fun things with them. I go long periods without seeing them. I'm really glad I live in the age of the internet and social media so I can keep up with them because now I live halfway across the country from them. So
Yeah.
yeah, so it's really hard like having to leave that life behind. I guess that's been the hardest part is sort of being have just like letting go of the life that I had before. Obviously not entirely, but it's like after a while I realize I'm like I'm doing this completely different thing and I'm going on this path that's very different from what I used to be doing. And they're all very supportive of it, but it's still like there's a lot of things I just kind of had to let go of.
Yeah. Um, do you see yourself, I guess, in graduate school? I'm 24 and in a PhD
Mhm.
program. I mean, by definition, I'm fairly young. But do you see
Mhm.
yourself making friends with, the like the younger cohort?
Yeah, I am I get along with everyone in my year. I think the youngest person in my cohort is 11 years younger than me.
Mm.
Yeah, and her and I get along great. Like we actually study with her all the time. She's in my study group, so
Yeah.
yeah, like I haven't had any issues with the younger people. My God, I kind of sounded like a boomer when I said that.
The
No,
first of many.
I swear I'm a millennial. I'm not a boomer. Yeah, no, I get along with every, everyone in my cohort, ranging from like people that are 11 years younger than me, and then I think I'm the oldest one in my year, but the second
Hmm.
oldest one, she's only 2 years younger than me. So,
Oh, okay,
uh,
so it's pretty far spread out then.
yeah, we've got a range of ages. I think most people are in their mid 20s though. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
The start when we can start complaining about back pain.
yeah.
So I guess if someone in their, mid 20s came to you and said that they were thinking about going back to school and getting their bachelor's degree, what would be two or three key points that you would want to tell them, some advice you would want to give them?
Yeah, I would tell them to not go in debt, spend as little money as possible. Like, start at a community college and then go to a 4 year that doesn't cost anything, especially, well, or doesn't cost much. I mean, it's
Mm-hmm.
United States, going to be money no matter where you go.
Yeah.
But, but yeah, like, it's not worth going into debt. You know, if you do have to take out loans, which a lot of people do, especially as adult students, that's why you pick a cheap school. Take out as little loans as possible. That's actually my advice for like anyone going to
Yeah.
college. I'm like, never. It's never worth it. Like paying a whole bunch of money for undergrad. Not. It's not worth it, especially if you want to go somewhere afterwards. Like med school or something, because
Yeah.
that's going to be a lot of money.
Start med school with $100,000 already in debt. Just
Yeah,
just rack it up a little bit more.
yeah. Um, and I guess also like you know, go to school if you want to. If you feel like you're ready, then do it. There's going to be a lot of people that'll be like, oh, it's not worth the cost or the time or whatever. But if you want to do it, just do it. Like, it's gonna. I mean, it changed my life. Like, I feel like the same person, but I also feel like a very different person. Like, it's definitely changed the way that I think about things. Um, I guess it's I guess it kind of has morphed me into thinking like a scientist a lot more than I used to.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's it's definitely changed my worldview, and it's been very worth it. So I would just say if they want to go back to school, it's worth it, and to do it however they can figure out a way to do it.
Yeah. Is there anything that you think I've missed so far that you'd want to talk about?
Not that I can think of right now.
I'm gonna say we've hit quite a few points here.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, do you have any closing remarks that you would like to make towards future non-traditional students who are thinking about going back?
Yeah, I guess like I said earlier, like do it if you're feeling pulled to it. um, you're gonna end up making some sacrifices. It's probably gonna be a little bit harder in some ways, especially if you have a family.
Yeah.
But I still think it's worth it to do it if that's what you're feeling. So,
Yeah.
if you feel like you're too old, you're not. My mom started med school when she was 41. She's been a doctor for more than 10 years, and uh, she's got probably 20 to 20 more years.
Yeah.
Or maybe even more. I don't know. She's very healthy. So, yeah. Yeah, there's plenty of time. You're still going to be older no matter what. So, you might as well be doing something you feel is worthwhile.
Yeah. You see, I've been told numerous times that 30 is the new 20.
Yeah.
It,
Well,
it, it
yeah.
really it doesn't really make me feel any younger even at 24, but
Yeah, I don't know. I'm like my stepdad is 70 now, and he's a doctor, and I think he's going to be a doctor until he dies or just gets so senile he can't work anymore.
but all right, well, thank you again for doing this.
Yeah.